Paul, so we have the business end of the truck.
Business end, this is the power end. This is the end of the vehicle that fascinates most people. You know, what's under the bonnet and why. Traditionally, it would normally be a 1HZ 6-cylinder diesel engine, non-turbo. That's bulletproof. These vehicles were workhorses. They weren't designed for much more than that. We've taken them and we all want to improve them and make them better. The one key need on the 1HZ 6-cylinder non-turbo is to have a turbo. Why? Because that little bit of extra power with the extra weight we've got in the car and high altitude gives you a huge benefit. So this motor is actually the 1HD FT motor. So it's a beautiful motor to have in. It's got a top-mounted intercooler. It's got a bigger radiator. So you want to make sure that when you do these type of transplants, you pay good attention to cooling. Small spotlights in the front. You hear me often say people put way too big spotlights in the front. I'm trying to get as much air to go through the air conditioning condenser so that the air conditioning condenser has half a chance to work efficiently and properly. The radiator will continue to do its job, and then of course you've got the air coming over the bonnet in through the intercooler. Okay, you're trying to get heat away from the engine. There's no perfect solution. This has worked really well. What do we add to this? Well, there's a compressor under the bonnet because it's convenient to have it under the bonnet. There's a little canvas bag where we store the air hose, so it's all in one place. You'll see one starter battery. I'm not a fan of putting extra batteries under the bonnet because I find, and I've seen it, cracks in the corners with too much weight on one side. Traditionally, the people put 2 batteries on one side. It can happen where these 2 batteries they do work, and it's not like it's right or wrong, but I found that it does crack over time. You know, when you're looking at in the engine bay, you're looking at putting underneath the bonnet what you need. We need a starter battery, the auxiliary battery moving in, because we can put a bigger battery when it's not under the bonnet, and also we don't want heat. You know, heat's not good for batteries, and if you're moving towards lithium batteries, you definitely don't want heat. So we've got the air compressor, the air hose for it. What we've done with the air hose, we've taken the compressor, the air intake for the compressor, that little filter, I threw it away, and I've taken a pipe round and we take air in from the main air filter. Okay, it's just a little thing. We've also added an extra air point. Now you see I cover the air points with little covers. My canvas man really, when I go to him with these requests, he's very generous with his time, and he'll really do all these little jobs I ask him to do. That's important. You know, you clean the engine, you wash it down, water goes in there, dust goes in there. You know, next time you try and use it, it's a problem. So what else we've added here is
that
the
an
extra fuel.
filter?
Sorry, no. This is actually an extra fuel filter. This is a Raycor filter which we fit. It's got a clear bowl at the bottom, so you can actually look through and see the quality of the fuel. So first line would be you driving your car. You've just filled up with fuel. You're heading down the road. It doesn't feel good. It's smoking. It's not pulling properly. 10 to 1 is the fuel. Open the bonnet. You can look there and you can have a good idea. Are there contaminants? Is there any water? It's starting to tell you a story of what might be the problem and the cause. Okay, having the extra fuel filter does allow you to protect the fuel system. We're always trying to stop bad fuel getting in the tanks. So you can either stop it before it goes in the tanks, and that's one precaution. And I think we've covered that before about how you should do that. And certainly having extra filters in the engine bays, looking after the engine.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is that an aftermarket intercooler?
Yeah, this is aftermarket. This has been added onto it, and you can see there's lots of really good designs. Some people put them front mounted. I always challenge that to a point, because I think, like anything, I'm taking this, I'm putting it in front. The air is going to go through the intercooler, through the aircon condenser, and eventually to the radiator.
It makes no sense.
Well, it works because you're limited. It's obviously more expensive to do something like this, you know. Then your question goes, do you fit an intercooler or don't you? So there's
that would limit the airflow into it, which
does.
should be
Yeah,
a
look,
primary.
It's a key consideration, you know, and of course you make it worse when you go and put big spotlights. So I try and keep the spotlights
And the
small.
leaf and the spore
Seed
catcher,
net.
does that affect air
Absolutely,
intake?
yeah, of course, no, sure. I mean, you're going to use that when you're driving through, you know, you're driving slowly, you're driving particularly on 2 tracks when there's long grass, and especially when the grass is seeded or it's dry. And then it's not only here you're worried about, you know, you're putting it over here to stop grass getting sucked into the radiator. You want to climb under the car at regular intervals and check that grass hasn't caught up in the exhaust tube. So, under here, it's just as it was. There's basically the air filter, the air conditioning condenser, the power steering, the original fuel filter, your battery. We haven't added anything else that we wouldn't
And
find.
you've kept it white so you can see oil leaks.
Well, when you change the color of a car, it actually adds a lot of expense to take everything out to do it properly. But we looked at it and thought, to see anything, white is certainly much better. It reflects anything you're going to look. So leave it. Well, I don't mind looking under the bonnet and it's white. So it serves a purpose, from that. But yeah, great setup. One of my favorite. If I had to choose the combination of the engine in a particular motor, I think this ticks all the boxes.
Very clean. And also, is it important to still have space in the engine for it to be able to breathe? Sometimes you get a big engine stuffed into a small space. Can that be a problem?
Look, I can't say it isn't a problem, because it depends on the manufacturers. The newer engines are designed with a lot more technology than I've ever had, and they would pay serious consideration to that. So you can't say the covers they put on are all designed to pull air away. Obviously, the more you put in an engine bay, the more complex then you're taking up space. The beauty about these simple old engines is that it does still have a lot of space around it. So it's great. We can use the space where we can. So yeah.
Do you see a day when some of these old engines come back into production specifically for overlanding if it gets big enough?
No, I think overlanding will continue to evolve, where we will have to embrace new technology. Technology has moved on from, I do a lot of classic car rallies. Now that's simple. You've got a points and condenser, a distributor, a fuel pump, and a petrol engine. It's simple, You might put an electronic ignition in. Now that goes back, early. You go classic cars, and then you get pre-war and post-war cars. So that technology is around. I think people will continue to keep these old engines going for as long as they can get parts, and because it does give you that realm of simplicity. And we like simplicity. In certain parts of the world where you can't get good fuel, you are restricted to what you're going to put through the engine. So you're going to have to pay careful attention to what you use if you want that reliability.
Is there any demand brewing to take the engine out and go electric on any of these trucks?
That would change the game totally. I mean, if you had an overland vehicle that could run on batteries and solar, we're not there yet. Okay. If you could be self-sufficient, the technology is increasing all the time. The panels we put on last week, last year, last month have changed by today and tomorrow. They're changing again. That's what's so exciting. Battery technology is changing. In 10 years' time, we're going to see massive changes. I would love to have the concept of having an electric vehicle in some ways. It would be boring because I'm a bit of a petrol head, so I really like the old motors. I like the sound and all that. But if you were in the bush and it was quiet, it wouldn't be the same experience, because that's what we're used to. You go to China and all the motorbikes, most of them are electric. They're hard to see and hear.
What is the je ne sais quoi, the being on the bike or the sound? Being on the bike, ultimately...
people like the sound. It's one of those things. We've grown up with it. If you'd only grown up with electric, you'd probably accept that more. And sound might be abrasive to the ears. We like the sound of these.
Do you like the sound of adventure that you can only get with a diesel engine?
I love it. It's just one of those, you start it up in the morning and it just purrs away and you head off on your trip, and it's just one of those.
Same with the noisy tyres, that's the sound of adventure.
Oh, noisy. I draw the line there. No, hell no. It's, tyre noise can be wearing. When you've got, it's like exhaust, we put bigger exhausts on these cars as well. We put more of a bigger bore exhaust to get rid of the heat and you've got to balance that out with how much noise you get, because if it's too noisy it can be really
That's
tiring.
where muddies have an issue.
The mud terrains are noisy, but then in certain, if you're going to drive up through West Africa, you want a tyre that can cope with mud, if you're going to go through those areas. So again, it's a compromise. There's no perfect solution. What we're looking at here is a vehicle that has been really well set up, gives you a certain need for what people want to use. Great truck, and I know it's going to go on some incredible trips. Ultimate Troopy. I think this is the ultimate Troopy for me. I really do. It's got a nice balance of enough fuel. You've got good water that you can carry. It's got solar panels. It's self-sustaining. It's got a good, powerful turbo motor. It's very well laid out inside. It's simple. It's clean. Everything's got its place in detail. So when you look inside, there's a bag for the rubbish that you can put rubbish away. There's cup holders for travel flasks. You've got a lockable central cubby box you can lean your elbows on and put stuff in there. You've got
And a few nice pull mouth touches like that extra little leaner.
yeah, your elbow rest. You know, when you're driving, that you get tired, and resting your arm gets uncomfortable on the window. We put a little elbow rest there, and it actually sits nicely. Now you sit comfortably. Because you've got to realize when you're spending many hours in the seat.
Would you change those old Troopy seats up?
Yeah, we do. And sometimes I've got a client, we're putting Shieldman seats in from Germany. You know, it really is about your posture and how you make it work, because you spend hours in the seat, you know, and you get out. A simple thing is when you're sitting in the seat is to actually maybe take a towel, roll it up and put it under your thighs, and just make sure that your seat is carrying your thigh, the inner thigh, on, and it's supporting that. Because if it supports that, your lower back doesn't take as much pressure. And play around with that so you eventually feel that you're sitting in the seat, it's comfortable, it's not too far away. When you get that ergonomics right, that postural thing for hours, you can get out the car and you can feel really good. And I get out and I'm always stretching. I get up, I use the bull bar for my best, and I'm stretching as much as I can, because you need to keep yourself moving. You know, long expeditions, sitting behind the steering is not good for us. You know, it's probably the worst place to sit and day in, day out, driving, you're always forward. Get out, stretch. So yeah.
And we're coming up to Christmas, festive break. Is that like a special time of the year for you when your clients can go out and really enjoy the hard work you put into a vehicle?
Look, a lot of people have been constrained by.
But I mean, generally speaking.
But generally, yeah, people like to come out. You know, we store a number of vehicles for clients overseas, so it's really nice for them to take time out and go and explore parts of Southern Africa, beautiful areas, and why not? It gets full, mind you. It's not my best time. My best time is after school holidays, when all the kids have gone back.
Just before the April school holidays?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it depends where you're going and what areas you're going to travel to get those really nice sweet spots. If you haven't got kids, you've got more flexibility.
And if you've got a truck like that, can you get further out, away from the crowds?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really what I'm trying to do is empower people to be self-reliant, confident in their skills, to go and travel those remote areas. Those remote places where you can sit, have a sunset, and there's no one else around, and there's nothing else.
Isn't that a beauty? In Europe that is so hard to find, but in Africa,
we find it.
It's attainable.
Yeah.
But you have to drive a little bit further.
You've got to drive a bit further, and there's villages and there's people living in places, so you've got to maybe go that extra mile.
As far as the eye can see and see no habitation, that is an African experience.
Well, I mean, Lesotho is a great little country. Lesotho is landlocked in South Africa. It's a beautiful small country. It's very mountainous. Spectacular mountain passes. I mean, we've taken people there, we've camped. We came down into this valley. It was a group of people we had. I do support for some expeditions, and a friend of mine owns a company called Tour de Force, and we pull people in and we take them on expeditions. We hire a whole bunch of four-wheel drives and we run trips in Namibia, Lesotho, and it just took these people into Lesotho, and they got a glimpse into another life. People living in a very simple way in huts, and then we went into this beautiful valley with this lake, basically this big river that came into a bit of a lake. No one else. We were there for, I think eventually the group voted to stay an extra night. That's priceless. There's nothing else around. That people don't experience every day. So yeah, it's a unique experience. That's what it's about. That's why we do this.
Just get the thing firing up. There we go. Much better than that, Mr. Marsh.
Happy to smile at anyone's face.